Welcome to Forbidden Archives, the Illuminati conspiracy where, well, I guess myths meet historical manuscripts, right? Whispers turn into revelations. I'm your host, and today we're going to pull back the curtain on, one of the most feared and misunderstood secret societies in history, the Illuminati. This isn't about, like, secret handshakes and hidden symbols, This is about how fear and power and philosophy, all that stuff, created this whole myth that, still kind of grips the world today. So welcome to Season 1, Episode 1, Inside the Shadows, Origins of the Real Illuminati. We've got like this huge stack of source material right here. And our mission today is to really, dive deep into the actual history, separate fact from like centuries of fiction, basically, and uncover the surprising truths behind this super enigmatic group. I mean, for you guys, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. What's so interesting is that the historical reality is way more nuanced and in many ways way more compelling than all those like sensational theories we see today. I mean, think about it. So our goal really is to extract the key insights from all these documents and then, paint a clearer picture of this super pivotal yet often super distorted historical society.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little. Because, I mean, the myths surrounding the Illuminati, they're basically a cultural phenomenon, right? Like, try spending, I don't know, 5 minutes online without bumping into some wild claim about their, like, pervasive influence. It's everywhere. And even our sources, they touch on some pretty specific examples of this, like modern folklore.
Yeah. What really jumps out is how these modern myths tend to latch onto like present day figures and events. Take that Kanye West thing back in 2010 where people were saying his success was because of some, sacrifice of his mother to the Illuminati, which is, bizarre. But it really shows how sensational and honestly often just totally baseless these rumors can be. And then you have like Jennifer Hudson. It makes you think this kind of folklore always pops up around like big moments in a celebrity's career. It's like a pattern almost. Key insight. The internet was like a crucible, It took metaphorical cultural commentary and turned it into like literal conspiracy theories and those visual symbols. Huge amplifier for all that.
Right, it's like this constant idea that, like, fame or fortune, that sudden kind of thing, it has to be fueled by some dark, secret pact. And this isn't new, right? I mean, these, like, supposed links between the Illuminati and pop stars, especially in hip-hop, they go way back, like, to the 90s even.
Yeah, but if you look at the bigger picture, those early references in hip hop, they were different. A lot of artists were using that imagery, the New World Order, the Illuminati, all that as metaphors, like warnings even about surveillance getting worse and civil liberties being chipped away. It was commentary on power, not necessarily like literal devil worship or anything.
So how do we go from that, like, from metaphors and warnings to artists being the Illuminati? Or at least, playing with the whole aesthetic, all those symbols.
Yeah, that's a huge question. It's about how these stories evolve. And the internet, like our sources say, it played a massive role. Blogs, websites, YouTube, tweets, all that. It created this like echo chamber where these ideas could spread so fast and then change into these crazy elaborate theories and the visual evidence that became super central to the whole thing.
Ah, right, the symbols. Triangles everywhere. The OK sign meaning 666, the eyes, the goat heads, horns. It's like once you start noticing them, you see them everywhere. And the dollar bill, that always gets dragged in. Right?
Oh, for sure. The pyramid, the all-seeing eye on the dollar, that Latin phrase, novus ordo seclorum, which means like a new order of the ages, it all became like prime proof for the new world order stuff. It's people taking these old symbols and looking at them through like a modern conspiracy lens, totally out of context.
Okay, so that's the crazy world of modern myth. But our like deep dive today, it's about the real Illuminati. So who were they like back in the day? Let's get into the history, the origins, all that.
The historical record, it's all laid out in your sources. It centers around this guy, Johann Adam Weishaupt. He founded the Bavarian Illuminati back in 1776. And get this, he even had a pen name, a pretty dramatic one, Spartacus.
Spartacus, wow, that is dramatic. So what was this, Spartacus guy doing before he started this whole secret society? Was he already like in the shadows doing shady stuff?
Not even close. He was actually get this, a professor of law at the University of Ingolstadt. Pretty respected, too. Which is, totally different from the image of like a puppet master hiding in the dark. But things changed. He lost his position, got exiled, labeled a traitor.
A traitor. Okay, now we're getting closer to the intrigue, right? But what was he really aiming for? What did the real Illuminati want?
This is where the historical goals, they're totally different from the myths. According to your sources, Weishaupt's goals, they were all about like making individuals and society better. Think, inspiring people to like perfect their moral character, building real human connections, stopping evil plans, helping people who are suffering but are good, promoting people based on merit, and, this is big, spreading knowledge they thought was hidden. Key insight. The historical Illuminati, their agenda, it was all about personal growth, moral development, and spreading knowledge. Totally different from the evil global power stuff we hear today.
Hidden knowledge. That sounds kind of, I don't know, suspicious, right? Like they had secrets they were keeping from everyone else.
Right, and what's so insightful is Weishaupt's whole philosophy. He thought society back then was, declining, degrading. He said the state itself, the way it was set up, it actually limited individual freedom because it made people dependent and created all these fake needs, like always wanting more stuff or needing total security. And that, he thought, distracted people from real self-improvement, from enlightenment. So for him, step one to freedom, get rid of all those unnecessary desires.
So it was like this ethical project, right? About living a better life, more meaningful, free from all that societal pressure.
Exactly. And he saw it as a slow process, like quietly dismantling corruption from within. And then eventually a golden age would happen. He thought secret groups, working quietly, were the best way to protect truth and make this change happen. He even compared them to like ancient schools of wisdom, and he hinted at a connection to Christ's secret teachings, to his disciples. He even referenced the Gospel of Thomas.
The Gospel of Thomas, that's not something you usually hear about with like Illuminati conspiracy theory. So they thought they were like carrying on some ancient tradition of hidden wisdom.
That seems to be a core part of how they saw themselves, yeah. And there's more. They wanted to create strong friendships among members, get rid of divisions in society, and make people focus on the common good, not just their own interests. The whole point was to unite everyone towards these like higher goals, promoting things like moderation, domesticity, and being kind to each other as the ethical standards for society. One of your sources even asks this powerful question, if all this were a crime, what then is virtue?
Wow, that's pretty far from the pop music and world dominated stuff, right? It almost sounds, well, idealistic, virtuous even. But if their goals were, at least on the surface, so good, why all the secrecy?
That's a key question, and the sources actually give us some answers. Weishaupt, he had this cyclical view of civilization. He focused on the push and pull between liberty and security. Societies swing back and forth between them. And he thought the Illuminati could be like a guiding force, subtly moving humanity towards what he called wiser associations.
Wiser associations? You mean like a better, more enlightened kind of society?
That's the idea, yeah. Now, about the secrecy. It had a few purposes. First, it was a way to like attract members, the whole idea of belonging to something exclusive, something mysterious that's appealing to some people. Second, secrecy built loyalty and trust within the group. You're in this inner circle, it creates a bond. And it also acted as a shield. Superiors in the order could watch members without being obvious. And super important, they could protect themselves, from powerful people who might feel threatened, or from just like nosy outsiders.
And the secrecy was strategic. It was about surviving in a world that might not be too friendly to them.
Exactly. And your sources, they get into the specifics of how they did this. Superiors would stay in touch with members, reading their stuff, analyzing it, taking notes on their behavior, having these like guiding conversations with them. New members even had to copy sensitive materials secretly, always returning the original so nothing got out.
That's intense. All that record keeping for a secret society, it's almost like bureaucratic.
It shows how organized they were. The Minerval assemblies, those were like their local chapters for discussion and learning. They had very specific rules. Members would meet in a special room, get called in one by one, and the superior would come in, sometimes wearing a hood and the order's jewel. There was this like official announcer, specific knocks on the door to prove who you were, and everyone entered based on their rank. The room itself even had a pyramid in the middle, probably symbolizing like enlightenment and their hierarchy, and a picture of Pallas Athena, the Greek goddess of wisdom, with lamps all around it.
Wait, a pyramid in the meeting room. That definitely fits the modern image.
Right. It's a visual that stuck around, even though it probably meant something different back then. More about their philosophy. like striving for knowledge and wisdom. Even getting kicked out of the group that had a whole process needed approval from the higher-ups.
So how did they find people to join this, super secretive, kind of intense group? What was recruiting like?
Their goal was to find people with like sharp minds from all walks of life and help them grow intellectually and morally. Recruiters were key. They'd investigate potential members really carefully, looking at their character, how smart they were, my social status, all that. And the recruiting itself, it was slow. They'd have conversations, subtly making the order sound interesting, talking about its goals. They'd also give them specific books to read, classics by Seneca, Plato, Cicero, along with some newer Enlightenment writers. It was all about getting them thinking along the same lines as the order.
So it was deliberate, not just like picking random people.
Totally. They really wanted to understand how people thought, both new recruits and existing members. They'd build trust so people would talk openly, watch their behavior closely, even have them keep diaries with notes on like everything they did. And they'd use these things called pensa, basically short essays on philosophical or ethical topics. It was a way to see someone's real opinions, how they reasoned, what they believed deep down.
Essays, that's like, I don't know, a philosophy club or something, not a group plotting to take over the world.
Right, and they also tested how smart their members were, and even more important for a secret group, if they could keep their mouths shut. Even members who lived far away had to write reports every 2 weeks, and those nearby had to visit their superiors weekly. Keeping information flowing and making sure no one talked, that was huge.
Now, there's always this talk about the Illuminati and Freemasonry. Like, were they connected? Our sources, they shed some light on that. What was the deal there?
So the Illuminati, they saw Freemasonry as another type of like mystery school, one that had kept some important truths, ancient wisdom, safe. But they also thought that the Masons, like their practices, what they were doing, it had become corrupted over time. So they thought the Illuminati could like revive it, bring Freemasonry back to its pure form.
So they thought the Masons had gone astray. They could set them straight.
That's basically it. At first, Weishaupt, he didn't know much about Freemasons. But then he saw how their structure could be healthful, the lodges, the degrees, so he decided to use that for the Illuminati. For some recruits, the ones who seemed really religious but weren't right for the higher levels of the Illuminati, they actually used the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry.
Like a stepping stone, or a way to find potential members.
Kind of, yeah. They even tried to influence Masonic lodges from the inside, introducing their own version called Illuminated Masonry, and a higher degree, the Scotch Novitiate. And there were differences, like converts from other Masonic traditions would use a special handshake instead of the usual oath. They even made rules for St. John's lodges under their control, focusing on morality and ethics.
So they were trying to, like, take over Freemasonry, make it fit their goals.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. They saw it as a way to spread their ideas and find more people who shared their vision.
Now, one source mentions something about women in the Illuminati. It's brief, but it sounds pretty progressive for back then.
Yeah, it does. They wanted to, like, nurture women's minds and hearts, give them a bigger role in society, not just in, like, domestic stuff, which was very different from how most people saw women at that time. It shows they might have been more egalitarian, at least in theory.
But this whole movement, it didn't last, right? We know they're not running the world today. So what happened? Why did they disappear?
There were internal problems, disagreements, which is normal for any group. But the main reason was the Bavarian government. They banned the Illuminati in 1785. That really shut them down.
I bet it wasn't just a polite request to stop.
No, it was serious. Arrests, documents being taken. And a lot of their original writings, they were destroyed in Munich during World War II. So studying them is tough. But their ideas, the connections between members, they didn't necessarily vanish. After the ban, other groups popped up, like the German Union. They pretended to be just reading clubs. But it suggests the Illuminati's ideas and networks might have survived, just more quietly.
So even though they were officially gone, their legacy, their connections, they could have carried on. That's fascinating. Okay, let's talk about religion. This always comes up with the Illuminati, especially in those conspiracy theories. What do the sources say about their actual beliefs?
This part is tricky. It's complicated and sometimes seems to contradict itself. Weishaupt, he seems to have like tailored his teachings depending on who he was talking to. He'd adjust to the popular religious beliefs of the time, but hide some of his deeper ideas from people he thought weren't ready. He even said that Jesus, Jesus of Nazareth, he combined simple, rational religion with the traditions people already believed to make his teachings spread better.
So he thought Jesus was like a master communicator, attaching to his audience.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it based on what one source says. But Weishaupt's personal beliefs, if you look at his letters and other writings, they don't seem very Christian. One source even quotes him saying, and this is kind of ironic, "Frankly, I never would have imagined becoming the founder of a religion." So he might have been deliberately misleading people about the religious stuff, or at least being vague, depending on who he was talking to.
That sounds, well, a bit dishonest. Did the other members know about this? Like that he might not actually believe what he was teaching?
It's not clear. The sources do say there were Protestant and Reformed theologians in the Illuminati who genuinely thought the order's beliefs were like true, pure Christianity. So there were probably different levels of understanding within the group. Maybe only the inner circle knew Weishaupt's real views, which might have been more radical, less religious.
Like there were different levels of initiation. Not just in rank, but in what they told you, what you were allowed to know?
Exactly. And there's another layer to this. They had this idea that different beings from different realities would see the same thing, like the sun, in totally different ways. It all depended on how they perceived things, their receptivity. That's a pretty advanced concept for the 18th century. It makes you wonder just how radical they really were philosophically.
That is pretty mind-blowing. Okay, let's talk about politics. What did the Illuminati think about the political systems of their time?
They weren't big fans of, nation states, the way things were organized back then. They thought it led to tyranny and it limited freedom. Their goal was to move past that, create these wiser associations where people could really thrive.
So they were against the whole idea of countries and governments as they existed then.
It seems like it. They thought real change, real progress had to start with individuals and then spread outwards through these wiser associations. They questioned whether it was even moral for monarchs to have so much power, even though they also made arguments defending those systems. They talked about how governments already abused their power, how they'd carefully educate their members, how people could leave the order if they wanted to, and how they had checks and balances to prevent their own leaders from becoming corrupt.
It's like they were trying to design a better system, like a utopian society almost.
Yeah, in a way, long term, they wanted to see less nationalism because they thought it would lead to more understanding between people, seeing each other as individuals, not just citizens of different countries. They were even suspicious of strong patriotism, thinking it could cause division and conflict.
So less focus on countries, more focus on humanity as a whole. That's pretty forward thinking for the 1700s.
It is. It suggests they wanted a more connected, more enlightened world, and they planned to get there through their own methods, working quietly and slowly.
Wow. Well, this has been an amazing deep dive into the real Illuminati. It's clear they were way more complex, way more nuanced than the myths make them out to be. No world domination plots here.
Right. What we learn from your sources, it paints a picture of a group driven by ideas. They wanted freedom, a better society, to spread knowledge. They just went about it in a very secretive way.
And it's incredible to see how organized they were, how they recruited people, how they educated them, their whole system of leadership. It wasn't just a bunch of friends hanging out. This was a serious organization with rituals, ranks, and a plan for influencing people's thoughts and actions.
Exactly. They were ambitious, and their goals were way more complex than, the evil villains we see in movies.
So, knowing all this, the real goals of the Illuminati, why they were so secretive, it really makes you think, how does this change how we see secret societies today? And conspiracy theories. What was their real impact, beyond the myths that have lasted so long? It's definitely something to consider. Thanks for joining me for this really eye-opening deep dive.